Hi there, it's Grace Kraaijvanger. Welcome back to the Art of What's Next podcast. And I think you're going to love today's special episode. Today, I'm in conversation with Gabrielle Tenaglia, who is the head of marketing for a company called Lettuce. Lettuce is on a mission to automate bookkeeping for small businesses and make sure that our freelancers and consultants out there are keeping more of what you earn. After Gabrielle taught a class for the Hivery, I knew I wanted to bring her on the show. So join me today as I chat with Gabrielle about how small business owners, founders, consultants, and freelancers can set our businesses up for success. Without further ado, let's have a great conversation with Gabrielle Tenaglia. So, Gabrielle, I'm so glad to be with you today. I've been really looking forward to this. You and I have something in common that is near and dear to my heart, and that is that we both believe so much in the power and empowerment, especially for our women business owners out there, of the business of one. I've been talking about, creating next chapters for women for over a decade, and I have seen solo-based business as such an impactful, amazing route for that, in owning your value, creating your own schedule, creating freedom. So let's talk a little bit about you as the CMO of Lettuce, which does an incredible job of creating a platform for automation of tax and accounting for businesses of one, but also in your own experience. You've been a solopreneur. So let's jump in right away and just talk about your personal journey as a solopreneur and why you're as passionate as I am about helping women create solo-based businesses.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me here today, Grace. It's lovely to be here.
I'm so glad you're here.
I have run my own business during 4 different chapters of my career. I am lucky that as a marketer who has spent a lot of my career working inside of advertising agencies, that there's always been a kind of baseline in agencies of people being able to run their own business, freelance, consult, come back in. And the rest of the world is now kind of catching up to that. But I have done it 4 different times during my career and for different reasons each time. The first time I wanted to be a part-time outward bound instructor in the summers. And there was at the time no full-time job that would allow me the flexibility to do that. And so I left and I spent 5 summers working in the boundary waters of Ely, Minnesota. And then at other stages in my career, I've done it for different reasons. More flexibility. I wanted to leave the role that I was in, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. And running my own business has given me the opportunity to try new things, to grow and learn in ways that the role that I was in just didn't have the flexibility for in that moment. And so I am really excited that today there's a lot more of that flexibility for people in the market. And I think we are only at the very beginning of what is going to be a true transformation in how people work and how companies operate and how businesses of one fit into that ecosystem.
I love that. It's interesting. Your outward bound example is similar to my story of I initially started a marketing consulting business because I was a professional dancer. I was a ballet and modern dancer in San Francisco. A lot of my friends were putting things together by waiting tables and teaching classes. And a friend of mine suggested that I use the marketing skills that I had learned and start doing a marketing consulting practice. And what you and I were talking about that I wanted to touch on today is just that it took me a long time before I had a business for years and I had clients for years without really acknowledging myself as a business owner. So I'd call myself a freelancer or a contractor, but I was running my own business. So I'd love to talk about that because I think it's a really interesting and common story that many of us have where we don't acknowledge that we're actually this business of one is powerful. So let's talk a little bit about that in your perspective on solopreneurs and kind of owning and acknowledging how powerful it is to run your own business.
It's incredibly powerful. There's a coach who we work with. Her name is Melissa Lieberman, and she does a whole session on a business owner's mindset and how moving from thinking of yourself as a consultant to a business owner can have a huge impact on your business. And I hadn't thought about that idea until About a year ago, in some of the early planning stages of Lettuce, I was sitting with our founder, Ron Harpaz, and we were talking about this. And he said, there's such a big opportunity for all of these people who think of themselves as freelancers or consultants to move from thinking about just selling hours of your time into thinking about yourself as a business owner. And I think, and when you and I were talking about this earlier, once you make that shift, there's a lot of doors that start to open up, not only in thinking about, okay, if this is a business, I should do some planning. I should have some goals. I should think about my year and give myself some milestones to try and hit, right? You can start to get more disciplined about how you operate. But there's also a lot more opportunity of how do I think about how to earn money that's not about selling hours of my time? Is there a product I could make? Is there a different kind of service I can offer? Do I need people to help me do some of the things that are maybe lower value, that are taking up my time, so I can focus on the higher value parts of my business that are going to actually earn me more money? I think once we start to think of ourselves as business owners, it creates just a different math to figuring out what you do.
And it's so interesting because every single one of us comes to the table with our unique experience, our unique skills, our unique knowledge, our unique passion. So each of us have an opportunity, and so many of the listeners on this show are in this kind of transition of, I'm not sure what I want to do next. They might be in a full-time job, looking to make a change, looking to maybe go out on their own. They might have taken a work pause for all kinds of reasons and trying to get back into work. They could be, suffering from things around ageism or pay gaps or, inflexible schedules or return to work that doesn't work. So there's all kinds of reasons that the listeners on our show and the community of women that I'm so honored to get to work with start to think about building their own thing. And what I find so empowering about a solo-based business is that you can build it in a way that works for you. One of the ways that I want it to work for the people that we serve is that they are really owning their value and getting paid what they're worth. So in that, we can get, and I'll say I'm in this too, we can get some inner critic voices around the way that we set up foundations for business, the way that we price ourselves, the way that we make money, the way that we organize our business. So will you talk a little bit about some of the mindset stuff that solopreneurs go through and how we can start to lay a solid foundation?
I can tell you about one of the big shifts that I needed to make for myself, and over those different chapters, thinking about how I was spending my time. There's another coach who we have worked with. I've, in this work with Lettuce, sort of built an ecosystem of people who all work with businesses of one and work to help them succeed. There's another coach who I met at an event not too long ago who talks about your zone of genius. And that comes from a book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
I love that book.
And I, years ago, felt like I had to do everything. When I was running my business, it was my business. And every I that got dotted, every T that got crossed had to be for me. Well, that's what my clients were paying for, right? They were paying for me and for my time. And there are a lot of things, like doing my taxes and accounting, for example, that are outside of my zone of genius.
Right.
And that I felt like I had to own, that I've let go of. Now, I want to be informed. I want to be smart. I want to run those pieces of my business like I'm the CEO running those pieces of my business. But I don't actually have to take every single paper receipt, put it in an envelope, then later put it in a spreadsheet and be able to explain to my accountant every single line item on that Excel spreadsheet. It is not a good use of my time.
Right.
It's outside of my zone of genius. And so now I think for me, the biggest shift is to think about how I can set up systems to run things like that are outside of both what I know best and what I enjoy doing, because that is definitely also outside my zone of enjoyment.
Yes.
Not just genius, but But it allows, when you start to think about yourself as a business and you start to think about how do I set up some systems that give me the opportunity to focus on the things that I'm very good at, and at the same time, be the CEO of my business,
Right.
it starts to create new opportunities.
I'm so glad you said that because I think that one of the challenges that I ran into when I was early in my entrepreneurship journey, and one of the challenges that I see so many of the members of the hybrid community going through, is this feeling like they have to know how to do all the things. And that again can light up that inner critic inside that's saying, like, I actually don't know how to run a business. I don't know how to set up a business. Where, especially when we're first starting out, there are far more things that we don't know than things that we do. And we cannot let that stop us. Because the zone of genius is where we need to be working. That's where we need to be rewarded. That's the part that, when in flow, can almost feel easy, or feel like I'll use the word, like a calling. Like, we know we're meant to do this work, but that doesn't mean we're meant to do all the work of setting up our business. And we don't want it to be messy. Like, there's nothing worse than feeling like I'm building something. I want this so bad. I know I can serve. I know I can help people, and feeling like there's like a mess behind the curtains. So what Lettuce does that I think is so interesting for our solopreneurs is really help create that solid foundation. So let's talk about the specifics of, like, what does a solid foundation look like? So for our listeners out there that might be just starting out, or our listeners that might have been in business for a year, 2, 3 years, but feel that kind of a little disorganization under the covers.
Yeah.
Will you talk about the specifics of how we can get really financially empowered and systems in place?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there are lots of folks who have been in business even longer than that who don't have these pieces in place because there's not a good playbook for businesses of one.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the reasons it's so important, I think, to talk about this. We don't talk about this enough, right? And I think that the first thing to understand is that there's a common question that we get is, should I have an LLC or not? And the thing that an LLC does for you, an LLC is a legal status that's defined by your state. So there's a state law that defines what a limited liability corporation looks like.
Right.
And the thing that an LLC can do for you is it can protect your personal assets against any kind of business liability issue that you might have. Whether or not this is really important for you depends on the kind of business you're in. And the kind of marketing consulting that I do, unlikely that I'm going to have a liability issue, right, with my clients. I'm not doing the kind of work where that would particularly be an issue. But if you feel like you want to have it, it's not that hard to put in place.
Right.
You can put one in place. You need to know that unless you also separate your business and personal finances, that liability might be difficult to enforce. So if you want an LLC and you want that liability protection, you should also have a business bank account, a business credit card, completely separate all of your business from your personal finances. And this is one of the things that I often tell people to do, is just make sure everything is separate, whether or not you have the LLC.
I want everyone to do that. I really want everyone to do that, because I think what happens sometimes, there's two things. We get going so fast and we think we have to do all these other things first that we don't button up. And then it creates a mess later. So we're creating a harder situation for ourselves later when we have to unwind everything. But going back to the mindset thing, I just feel like you take on a different feeling of credibility and authority inside yourself when you setting up that separate business account, setting up that business credit card, knowing that that's your business, not your personal.
That's
it's
right.
It was a game changer for me when I did that. Again, I was in my 20s when I started my first business. And this was back in the day. So I had a binder. I had a binder, an old fashioned binder. But even the binder and the business bank account and the business checkbook, it helped me not just to be organized, but to feel like I was creating something.
Yes. Something that is yours, but is separate from your personal life and your personal money. And you think about it a little bit differently. There's some mindset shift that happens in there. And I think that a lot of people, the reason to, in addition to protecting your personal assets for liability purposes, having that business bank account, a separate business credit card, gives you a clean set of data about your business. You're not trying to then pull apart, well, was this personal? Was this business? What are these expenses? And all that becomes really important when you're trying to figure out, how much am I making?
Right.
What taxes do I have to pay? And you will have just a clean set of data about your business. And now I don't really spend cash in my business. My business, I do marketing consulting work. So I have limited expenses. I have a computer, I have some travel. I don't really save receipts anymore because I don't use cash in my business, except buy an occasional cup of coffee, which if I'm not deducting that $3, it's not really going to hurt me.
Right.
And so I'm able to save myself the time of trying to keep and track receipts. Everything is digital. All of my credit card expenses in that card, I know are business expenses. They're all tracked in my bank account and in my credit card.
Yeah.
It just, having that business bank account, having all of my money separate saves me a lot of time and effort. I don't have to worry that my business and personal money is mixed together. I have a separate, clean set of data of all of my business expenses. I don't have to save receipts. I don't really use cash in my business, so I don't have to hold on to those receipts, try and categorize them later for my accountant or, for myself when I was doing it on my own. And it gives you a much easier way to understand how much you're making, what your business expenses look like, without having to do extra work to figure those things out.
Let's talk about some money rituals for our solopreneurs. And this is for, again, all of this is for people that are, even if they're thinking about starting a business or they're well into their business. What you're talking about in terms of separating things and making sure that that's clean, it's reminding me of one of the most important rituals that I have. I do this thing called Financial Friday, where every Friday I look at my business financials and I look at either the revenue that's come in, expenses, and I just look at where I can move the dials. Are there places that I could increase my revenue? Are there places that I could trim down my expenses? Will you talk a little bit about some money rituals that can help us be, again, empowered, confident, and also more profitable? I want us, I'm an advocate for women solopreneurs. I want them making money. I want them owning their value. So will you talk a little bit about rituals and maybe their mindset shifts, but things that you've seen work?
Sure. And I love this idea. A bookkeeper who your community might know, who I met recently, Gabrielle Tenaglia, talks about how important it is to look at the numbers, because if you don't look at the numbers, your emotions will tell you a different story about what the numbers are. And so I love that you have this Financial Friday appointment with yourself where you're taking a look at the numbers, knowing that you control those numbers.
I want to just pause there because I love what Gayla mentioned. She is a high member. She's amazing, Gabrielle Tenaglia. But I just want to make sure the audience heard that. So if you don't look at your numbers,
your emotions will tell you a different story about what's happening.
True.
It's so good. It's really so good.
True.
And it happens all the time.
And we can go in both directions. We can go into scarcity mode, thinking that we're not achieving, that we're not making our goals simply by not reviewing. But we also can put our head in the sand around places we can save money or expenses that may not be fruitful or impacting our business. So let's talk about that, because I know one of the things that Lettuce specializes in is the LLC to S Corp. But we, maybe we'll touch on that. We can go in deeper to that because there's more stories and things that I want to hear from you. But just at a baseline, will you help our solopreneurs understand LLC, S Corp, and how all that works and how it saves them money?
Yep. So I had mentioned that the LLC is a legal status that's governed by your state. It can protect your personal assets from any kind of liability issues, but it doesn't do anything for you from a tax perspective. There are no tax benefits to having an LLC. And in fact, you pay some extra additional taxes and fees for having one.
Right.
An S Corp was created by the IRS to help small businesses pay less tax. And an S Corp is a tax status that is governed by the IRS. So it's a different thing. You need to have an LLC or other corporate entity to have an S Corp. If you already have one, you can add an S Corp on. Now, an S Corp helps you, the first way or the biggest way it helps you is very specific. Everyone who works in the United States pays Social Security and Medicare taxes. When you work for someone as a W-2 employee, you pay half the amount that's owed and they pay half the amount. So today you each pay 7.65%. You split that tax with your employer.
Now, if you're in the audience and you're zoning out a little bit, stay with us, because
Coming right back.
The reason we're talking about this is because we want, again, what Gabrielle and I agree on wholeheartedly is that we want solopreneur women to make money. And that means we want you to be financially empowered. So, okay.
Yeah,
so
and the real reason we're talking about this is because it costs you a lot of money. Because when you work for yourself, you increase the self-employment tax, the Social Security and Medicare tax you pay by 7.65%, because the government sees you as both the employee and the employer.
Right.
And so you have to pay, instead of 7.65%, 15.3% tax on what you make. So if you're making $100,000, the number's a little bit less for a few different reasons, but you're essentially paying $15,000 on that $100,000 in self-employment tax and Social Security and Medicare tax before you pay state and federal taxes. If you have an S Corp, you pay yourself a little bit differently. The government requires that you pay yourself payroll, you give yourself a salary, and you only pay that 15.3% tax on the payroll. So if you're making $100,000, you might split your income into two buckets: a $40,000 payroll and a $60,000 owner's distribution or profit.
Right.
You pay that 15.3% on the 40, which is about $6,100. It's a lot less than 15. And that's the baseline of what an S Corp does for your business. And then there are other savings that you can take advantage of. On top of that, there are better deductions for healthcare. There are better deductions for retirement planning. But once you've set yourself up as a corporation, you could take advantage of all those different things.
See, these are the kinds of conversations that, this is one of the reasons I started the Hivery, is I felt like I was having to look far and wide to have these kinds of conversations of I know we're all so eager to help each other. We're all so eager, women supporting women is one of the most dynamic, forces, I think, that is coming, certainly in the future. And we are coming in a force. Women entrepreneurs are powerful, and it's such an incredible opportunity. And yet, having these conversations about the truth around the numbers and the truth around how to save and the truth around how to run a solid foundation for your business, I was having trouble finding these conversations. So this very conversation is kind of a symbol of the kind of conversations that I want women having, of how can we look out for each other? So let's take a step back a second and I want to hear what you think about women starting their own businesses, and specifically businesses of one. What do you think is the potential in our culture and world and future as we, as women, build our businesses and build them owning our value?
I think it's incredibly powerful right now for women to know what they're worth and to ask for that in the market. I think, there's been research done that shows that it's going to be over 100 years before the wage gap between men and women is closed at the rate that we're going right now. And I was on a panel with Dr. Kelly Monahan from Upwork. She runs the Research Institute at Upwork a couple weeks ago. And I did not know this, but she said that, and I'm gonna just reference my quote from her, that women who are running their own business of one are outpacing full-time employees when it comes to both advancing their careers and the income that they are earning, which is really interesting, right? Incredibly powerful that when women are running their own businesses, they are making more and doing better. And I think that's incredibly powerful today. You will do better working for yourself than you were working at a company. And I think there's a lot of folks, we had talked about this before, who don't have the confidence to give that a try. But not only are women earning more, but there's some research that just came out from a group called MBO Partners that helps folks find contract work and set up their businesses. And they said that full-time independents are 84% happier than people in full-time jobs. They're 79% say working on my own is better for my health. And 65% feel more secure working independently than they did when they had a full-time job. So not only is there an opportunity for women to do better financially and economically, but if you think about holistically feel more secure, be happier, be healthier. It's empowering in lots of different ways.
Absolutely. And I mean, that is the crux of why I love having conversations like this, because if we can convince even one listener out there that she can do it, she can do it. And whether it's as a nutritionist or a closet organizer or a consultant or an accountant or whatever, or a choreographer or whatever it is she does, there is a solo-based business in there. There is an opportunity to create that, again, that unique zone of genius, that mix of skills, inspiration, passion. I interviewed an amazing woman, Dr. Tara Wright Trent, who used to say, if you don't know what to do, follow what breaks your heart. So many women I know have created incredible businesses around being of service, around helping people. Many people in our community create incredible businesses because they're so passionate about elevating women entrepreneurs. Exactly what we're talking about. So I just think I get so excited at the opportunity to create confidence. And if we can create confidence through, like we were saying earlier, through building systems that are sustainable, that empower you to know the information, I get really excited about that.
It's so powerful to know that there is a system that you can set up that can help you run your business. And these things, there's this perception out there, this kind of conventional wisdom, that the only way you can do well from a tax perspective is through these like secret kind of hacks, right? Like it's this...
You feel like you have to be in the know, like you're like part of some.
In the know.
You're not in a club that other people seem to be in, right?
And there's someone out there who knows these hacks and they can tell you what the secrets are, and it's not actually true. And in fact, a lot of those things are not advisable to do. Right. There's this whole TikTok culture now. It's so powerful that the IRS last tax season actually told people, don't get your tax advice on TikTok, because your return will end up, your refund will be held up. We'll have to make amends because there was so much misinformation out there. This stuff is established by the IRS. It is legal. It's available, and people just don't know about it. And part of the reason is because it's been hard to do in the past. To run an S Corp for your business is bureaucratic and time consuming and involves a lot of bookkeeping. But it is one of the kinds of things that technology has changed. We can automate that work now. We can automate the bookkeeping. We can automate the paperwork and the form fills. And it's become much more accessible, and more people need to know about it.
And you're a great example of someone who is doing all of this. I mean, so you are a business of one. You're a fractional CMO for Lettuce, but you're doing marketing work for other clients. So tell us, I'm curious when was the moment for you that you personally were like, I'm going to be an advocate for this. I want other people to know about this. And specifically for women, was there like an aha moment where you said, I'm going to make sure to spread the word on this?
It's so interesting. I think it is something that has evolved for me over time. I run a women's networking group called the Wolfpack, which has been on hiatus for the past year because doing a 0 to 1 startup takes up all of your available time.
Yes.
And I have always been a supporter of women building professional networks, knowing folks who can help them advance their careers, the kind of cross-pollination of people from different industries in different roles, helping each other figure out what's next or where to go or how to navigate whatever the situation that they're in. So it's always been something that's been really important to me. And then coming into this role at Lettuce and seeing how there are so many really interesting communities out there of women doing this work and supporting other women to build their business of one. Yes. And so it was just a natural fit for me. I think we talk about wanting to become sort of the people that we needed earlier in our career. And I worked for some incredible men who were my bosses and mentors. There were some, but there weren't a lot of women who were role models for me when I was younger, and coming up in my career. And I really value being able to show other women, hey, there's a way to do this. Yeah. And it might be messy and it's not perfect and it's not linear, but there's lots of people who have done that and who have had these nonlinear careers or had these different chapters where they've tried different things, and you shouldn't feel afraid of doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things I love about this conversation is that I really love taking people behind the scenes and where we can have an honest conversation about, yes, I believe that women can create these solo-based businesses that can be profitable, that can give them the freedom that they want, they can give them the satisfaction that they want. But let's also be honest that having your own business also comes with its own set of challenges. They can be emotional challenges, financial challenges, challenges with the landscape of our economy and our world, our country. So will you just talk a little bit about how do we set ourselves up well for getting through those challenges, facing those challenges, and persevering? We want our women entrepreneurs to keep going. So will you just talk a bit about that?
Absolutely. There's one thing I tell people often, and it comes from my experience running new business and ad agencies. So I did a lot of sales for ad agencies, right? That's what running new business pitches is essentially. And what I learned in that process is that you should always say yes until you have to say no. That there is a process. And I see a lot of people early on get stressed about it's not the exact thing I wanted to do.
Right.
It's not, I have too many things in my pipeline right now, and what happens if they all come through and then I'm not going to be able to do them all? Or there's always a variety of concerns. And I think that we need to give ourselves the permission to investigate the work, see if we can shape it in a way that fits our expertise or the timing or our availability, and there's a lot of things that change in that process of meeting someone, figuring out what they need. And so I tell people, always say yes until you have to say no. Investigate what's there. Understand if you can convince the client to make the adjustment that you need to make it work for you. Or maybe they think they need A, but what they really need is B, and they don't see that yet. And you can help them see that they need a different kind of project, and it's one that fits your expertise and your zone of genius in a way that they weren't even aware of.
I love that. It takes courage it takes courage to be willing to really look at what you're offering and be willing to change it, either because it's not working for your client or it's not working for you. I think there's an enormous amount of kind of self-reflection that happens as entrepreneurs, where we have to study what are the pieces that are giving us energy, whether that's financial energy or emotional energy, and what are the pieces that are depleting us. That's where I think, again, getting these systems in place so that math doesn't lie to you. What I love about, math just shows you the truth. And then you can also look at that layered on top of course, how it made you feel, what kind of satisfaction it brought in, what kind of energy it gave you or depleted from you. But I love what you're saying, because I think it just is a reminder that we can evolve. We don't need to just come out of the gate with this one shiny, perfect offer.
That's right.
Right?
We can evolve, and we can also shape the opportunities around us, I think, in ways that you can't always see in the first conversation. Right. And that can become really powerful when you're running your own business, to say, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity, I'm going to make it fit for me. Right. we can do that. Absolutely. You don't have to just take it as is.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And then I just to tack onto that, what I want for our entrepreneurs, and I'm curious what you think about this, because the converse of that is that we can do what I call is polishing the stone, like make something so perfect behind the scenes before we actually show it to someone. And one of the things that got me through when I was in the early stages of building the Hivery is my mantra was done is the new perfect. Like if I could just get it out in the world, then I could learn from the market and from my customers, from my community, of what people wanted and needed. So what do you think about that? About kind of, I know we're talking about creating systems and foundation, but there's also an element of like, once we get those things in place, do it messy.
Yeah. I am a huge fan of that. And I think there's so much of that in we're here in the Bay Area, in the startup culture of the Bay Area, of you've got to put it in the market and learn from it. And in fact, at Lettuce, our founder is a, serial founder. He's been in multiple startups. And he says, the market will, he says that the market will tell you if it's good or not, or the market will tell you what's working or not. And he has seen too many times where people are trying to make something perfect. They're making this perfect product. They have this perfect business idea. They spend too much time perfecting it, and time and money, because it's both of those things. And then you put it out in the market, and there's so much learning to be had when you put it out in the market. He says, just get it out sooner. And that's how we approach our marketing. We get it out and see how people react to it.
Yes.
And we've approached our product that way. We put it out and then we see what's working, we see what's not. And we are, many of us, users of the product internally also. So we're the first testers, essentially, when there are new features or new things that we're doing. So I think you need to learn from the market versus making it this perfect thing.
I love it. I'm so glad that we've had this time with you and to show these resources. Again, like, these are the conversations that I want our solopreneurs to be having with each other, of like, just again, unveiling what is possible, and that we can do this. We can not only run successful, profitable, freedom-based solo businesses, but we can do it in a way where we're not having to do all the things. And we're able to create that solid foundation. So, Gabrielle, thank you so much for your time and energy. I love that you're advocating for, especially, my beloved women solopreneurs that are putting their work out in the world. So is there any last advice or anything that you want to share with our audience?
I keep a sign above my desk that says, "You are doing a fucking great job."
Yes.
Because there's no one who's going to tell you that. And you have to be your biggest advocate and tell that to yourself. So if the last piece of advice I can leave you with is just tell yourself every day that you are doing a great job.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
I hope you found this episode helpful, idea-provoking, and inspiring, especially if you're in the midst of creating or clarifying your next chapter. I can't even put into words how much I appreciate you, your vulnerability, your stories of creating a life and meaningful work amidst adversity, grief, ever-changing and challenging times, and of course, life's peaks and uncertain valleys. You are seekers, wisdom sharers, and artists of life, and together we can build meaningful next chapters that feel aligned with who we really are, what we're put on this earth to do, and how we can make a difference one human being at a time. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And I would love it if you could leave a review for the art of what's next. If you know someone who wants to create a new chapter or who would appreciate this episode, please share it with them. You can text it to them or email them the link or post about the show on your Instagram. If you want more help in creating your own meaningful next chapter, join the Hivery newsletter to get inspiration, stories, and resources to help you create your next chapter like an artist. Sign up at thehivery.com/podcast or at the link in the show notes.